Hey guys, how you doing? Let's talk about the Samsung Galaxy A37, a smartphone that looks very familiar at first glance, but raises a few questions once you take a closer look. Because what we got right here is a 6.7-inch AMOLED panel, 120Hz, a 5000 mAh battery, 45 watts charging, One UI 8.5, and once again the typical Samsung mid-range approach where the overall package is supposed to matter more than flashy individual features. The only problem is the market in 2026 is way more competitive than it used to be, and that's exactly why the Galaxy A37 is such an interesting device. Not because it reinvents everything, but because Samsung is trying to build a safe, familiar, and long-lasting smartphone package here. I have the A37 in awesome white, and in this color it actually looks really clean and well put together. The real question is that still enough today, especially when you're not that far off from the A47 price-wise? That's exactly what we're going to find out today. Let's start with the design, because this is where the Galaxy A37 quickly shows where it sits in Samsung's lineup. The phone looks modern enough, but not quite as refined or premium as the A57. At roughly 163/78 by 7.5 millimeters, it's a bit bigger, wider, and also noticeably heavier. 196 grams isn't extreme, but in daily use you can definitely feel that this isn't a super lightweight or especially slim device. Especially if you're coming from something more compact or thinner, you will notice the difference. Samsung does use Gorilla Glass Victus Plus on the front and back, but the frame is plastic. It doesn't feel cheap, but it's also not as premium as an aluminum frame. On the positive side, the device feels solid overall. No cracking, no flags, and in awesome white it looks pleasantly minimalistic. I actually think this color suits the A37 better than darker options, simply because lighter colors hide fingerprints much better on a glossy back. Because yes, this phone does pick up smudges fairly quickly. Not a huge issue, but something you always get with a glass back. One real highlight is the IP68 rating. That's still a big plus in this class because it adds a lot of everyday durability. When it comes to the display, Samsung does what they've been doing really well in this price range for a while. The Galaxy A37 features a 6.7-inch Super AMOLED panel with 1080 by 2340 resolution, 120Hz, and a measured peak brightness of 1246 nits. Overall, this is simply a good display. It's sharp enough, has strong contrast, nice colors, and it's bright enough for everyday use. Whether you're watching videos, scrolling social media, or just browsing, it performs really well. Samsung clearly knows what they're doing with all the panels, and you can see that right here. Sure, the bezels aren't the slimmest, which makes the phone look a bit less modern compared to some competitors or the A57. But once the screen is on, that matters a lot less in daily use. The 120Hz refresh rate makes everything feel smooth, scrolling looks fluid, and the overall experience feels more modern. The speakers are also solid, the stereo setup gets quite loud, and more importantly, sounds good in everyday use. Voices are clear, YouTube videos are enjoyable, podcasts too, and even music sounds decent for smartphone speakers. Of course, it won't replace good earphones or a Bluetooth speaker, but for this class, it's more than usable. There's no 3.5mm headphone jack, but that's not really surprising anymore. One area where Samsung continues to shine is the software. The Galaxy A37 ships with Android 16 and One UI 8.5 right off the box, which is a real advantage. Even if the hardware isn't leading the pack, you're getting a very polished and mature software experience. One UI feels familiar, well structured, feature-rich, and stable in everyday use. On top of that, Samsung promises 6 major Android updates, and that's a very strong argument in this price range. If you're planning to keep your phone for several years, this isn't something you shouldn't underestimate. Even though the A37 doesn't include all the AI or premium features of the higher-end Galaxy models, you're still getting a modern system with plenty of useful features and long-term support on paper. The optical fingerprint sensor under the display does a decent job. It's not the fastest, but reliable enough that it won't annoy you in daily use. Face unlock is also available, but the fingerprint sensor is clearly the more secure option. Now we get to the part that will probably be the most debated: performance. Inside, you will find the Exynos 1480 paired with the Eclipse 530 GPU, along with either 6 or 8 gigs of RAM depending on the version. My first impression is pretty clear. This isn't a slow phone, but it's also not one that stands out in terms of power or future-proofing. The benchmarks reflect that. Around 700 points in Antutu, that's okay, but not outstanding. In everyday use, this means the phone runs fine. apps open at normal speeds, browsing, messaging, streaming, and social media are no problem at all. Even light to moderate gaming works without issues. But once you expect more, you start to notice the limits. Especially the 6GB base model might be questionable if you plan to keep the device for several years. It's fine for now, but Samsung promises up to 6 years of updates, and it's fair to question how well this hardware will hold up in long term. On the plus side, the phone remains smooth enough in daily use and doesn't feel like it's struggling with basic tasks. It's just the kind of performance you would describe as solid but not exciting. Battery life is much less of a concern. Samsung sticks with 5000 mAh battery, and combined with the display and relatively efficient hardware, the A37 achieves an active use score of around 14 hours. That's a good result. In real life, that means getting through a full day is no problem at all. With light to moderate usage, you can expect very comfortable battery life. If you mainly chat, watch videos, listen to music, and occasionally take photos or use navigation, this phone will easily keep up. Even heavier use doesn't immediately push it to its limits. Sure, there are phones with bigger batteries or longer endurance, but Samsung still delivers a reliable experience right here. Charging goes up to 45 watts wired, which is solid. Not record-breaking, but fast enough to refill the battery in a reasonable time. It's nice that Samsung didn't remove this feature on the A37. What's missing though is wireless charging. Not unusual for this class, but still worth mentioning. Samsung keeps things pretty traditional with the camera setup. Now on the back you get a 50MP main camera with OIS, an 8MP ultra-wide and a 5MP macro camera. On the front there's a 12MP selfie cam. Video recording goes up to 4K at 30f on both the main and the front camera. The main camera delivers solid results in good lighting. Photos are sharp, have decent detail, and the colors are typical Samsung. Slightly saturated but pleasant and not overly exaggerated. Especially in the architectural shots, you can see the fine details are preserved well, even in larger or more complex scenes. Dynamic range is also quite good. The sky doesn't blow out immediately and shadow details are still visible. In some situations, HDR processing can feel a bit aggressive, but overall you get images that are perfectly fine to share right away. The ultra-wide camera does lose some quality, sharpness drops toward the edges, and colors aren't quite as consistent as on the main camera. Still, it's perfectly usable for social media or quick shots, especially for landscapes or big buildings. Zoom is more functional than impressive. Once you zoom in, you lose detail fairly quickly. 2x is still okay, but beyond that, things get noticeably softer. Selfies are also solid, skin tones look fairly natural, sharpness is good, and portrait mode works reliable overall. Background blur is mostly clean, although it can struggle slightly around the hair. In general, you will notice Samsung's typical processing. Faces are slightly smoothened, making them look a bit cleaner than in real life. Some people like that, others don't. So the Samsung Galaxy A37 is for me, one thing above all, a very typical Samsung mid-range smartphone. It doesn't try to impress with extreme specs, a crazy design, or some standout killer feature. Instead, it aims to be good in almost every area. And for the most part, it succeeds. The display is good, the speakers are strong, battery life is solid, the software is modern, and the long update support is a major advantage. At the same time, it's also clear why the A57 exists above it. The A37 is heavier, less premium in terms of materials, not particularly strong in performance, and overall more of a device that sells through availability, Samsung software, and a familiar package rather than aggressive value for money. And that's why the price matters a lot right here. If the Galaxy A37 is available cheaper through some contracts, deals, or price drops, it can be an attractive option. At launch price, however, it feels like a solid device that plays things a bit too safe. Not bad, but not something you would instantly recommend without hesitation. If you like Samsung, want a big display, value long updates, and just need a reliable everyday phone, the A37 is absolutely fine. And I guess that's already it for today, so I guess I will see you in the next one. Peace!